Right view, essential ways of seeing Sangha. Sangha seems like such a simple thing. It's just a group of people who come together to sit in stillness and silence. They are barely connected in shared presence. No food, no entertainment, no phones, no distractions, no conversation, no activities. Just sitting, facing a wall, not even looking at each other. What could be more pared down in human relationship? It's stripped of all social expectations and responsibilities. The barest, most liberating way to be, as Stephen
Well,
Baxter,
when you lean back, Anne, it's hard to hear you.
alone with others.
Oh. And yet, no, it's not. Is it me? It's Ed.
That
It's me. Okay, I didn't hear Ann stop. Sorry.
Yeah, she faded out there a little bit. I think a little bit of a sound issue.
Okay.
There
And
you-
yet, right view means seeing things as it is, as Suzuki Roshi put it. But seeing is not simple. We may peer at a drop of pond water through a microscope, but we won't see what a microbiologist sees. We have to learn how to look in order to see what that scientist sees. In an important sense, then, education is not about learning the battles of the Civil War, the formulas of math, the anatomy of a frog, or the themes of Macbeth. It is learning how to see, how to view a situation from the perspective of a historian, a mathematician, a biologist, or a discerning reader, and knowing, even more importantly, when each perspective is called for. It means knowing from that perspective the right questions to ask and its methods for gaining understanding.
Whenever I read about seeing, I think of a photographer that I'm sure Ed knows of, Ernest Haas. And he actually came to our school once, but he would say, looking is merely orienting yourself as opposed to seeing, and I just love that. Okay, so we have the Sufi teaching story. I guess I'm next. You think that because you understand one, that you must therefore understand two, because one and one make two, but you forget that you must also understand and.
oh huh,
Um,
I love this.
wow. I like that.
You want to read
I
that?
read that again. It's pretty difficult.
Please.
You think that because you understand one, that you must therefore understand two, because one and one make two. But you forget that you must also understand and. Okay,
Mm,
and that's about sanghas.
That is so awesome.
I like that.
In the same way, learning to see as a Buddhist is not about learning the 12-fold chain of dependent origination, the eightfold path, or resolving koans. It's not about adopting a system of beliefs. It means seeing and thus acting as Buddha. Becoming a Sangha means clearly perceiving ourselves as a Sangha and acting as a Sangha.
Oh.
That's beautiful. Is that your writing, Pat?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
That's
That's just what I needed tonight. Because I don't like everything I read about Buddhism. Okay.
okay. Clear, wise seeing is one of the is
No.
of the yeah, clear, wise
Oh, okay.
seeing is of the utmost importance, not only for Sangha leaders, but for the Sangha as a whole. 3 fresh ways of seeing: the systems perspective, the evolutionary perspective, and the perspective of architecture and design reveal the deeper relational qualities of Sangha beyond the concept of spiritual friendship. They can help us to support healthy development of the Sangha, manage the inevitable challenges, and troubleshoot problems skillfully. Most importantly, they can help us address dilemmas and difficulties, trouble, struggle, and strife at the appropriate level of scale. Oh,
When someone complains
wow.
something, for example, is it simply a personal preference that rankles them, or does it point to a deeper structural issue that needs to be resolved by some systemic change in a form or a policy? If so, chastising or mollifying the person would not resolve the issue and may even make it worse. And on the other hand, changes to the system inevitably impact individuals. And so we need to be sensitive and wise in preparing people for changes and addressing their questions and concerns openly. Do we want to read the facing page?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're muted.
Oh.
Sorry. Okay. Your Sangha, family, friends, and co-practitioners, is the soil, and you are the seed. No matter how vigorous the seed is, if the soil does not provide nourishment, your seed will die. A good Sangha is crucial for the practice. Please find a good Sangha or help create one. Thich Nhat Hanh.
Okay, is it me again?
Yeah.
Start
Monks.
with,
Monks, yeah, it's where it's still on the facing page.
okay, I had to slide back over. Monks, there are these two kinds of communities. What two? The divided community and the harmonious community. And what is the divided community? The community in which the monks take to arguing and quarreling and fall into disputes, stabbing each other with piercing words. This is called the divided community. And what is the harmonious community? The community in which the monks dwell in concord, harmoniously, without disputes, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with eyes of affection. This is called the harmonious community. These are the two kinds of community. Of these two kinds of community, the harmonious community is foremost. The Buddha.
I think we're on
Blending like milk and water.
Yeah, we're on, like milk and water. Of course, is where we are. Yeah.
Of course, there is no way to prepare for excuse me, for some sudden upheavals, such as a global pandemic. Although I recommend Jane McGonigal's excellent book, Imaginable: How to See the Future Coming and feel ready for anything, even things that seem impossible today, as a guide for future planning. And it's impossible to predict the unintended consequences of changes, decisions, and even words. That's why it's so important to have our ethical foundations deeply established to withstand the winds and storms that can rock the Sangha, and to strengthen the deep ties of our relationship to each other and to the Dharma.
Sorry. Whoops, I found it. Okay, in this chapter, we explore 3 novel ways of seeing that expand our perceptions regarding the Sangha: the systems view, the evolutionary perspective, and seeing architecture as emergent design. Taken together, they provide what I think of as an ecological perspective. It is a tender and poignant view, a view of the marks of existence as community, suffering, impermanence, and non-self. In the Sangha, these marks are not merely personal, they are collective, relational qualities of our shared experiences. Our shared experience. Sorry.
Sangha is a jewel with many facets. In this book, we look at Sangha from different angles, different dimensions and views. This chapter explains the shifts in perspective that have informed our work together, developing the Sangha. These new perspectives, which radically upended my own worldview, are not insights that came from meditation or study of the Dharma or conversations with Zen teachers. They are the result of my research and study in graduate school, not only in rhetoric and writing, but in anthropology, cognitive science, philosophy, and other fields through independent study. It was there I learned about systems thinking, the evolutionary view, and social architecture and design. These ways of seeing were incorporated into my dissertation and book, The Wealth of Reality, and certainly shaped the way I've thought about our Sangha's unique development and structure. They're not theories or methods, but rather transformations in perspective. This chapter is told from my, Peg's, experience, and it describes these three essential ways of seeing Sangha.
And should we do what's on the right,
Sure.
Anne?
Okay. Complex systems. A library is a complex system. Austin Public Library. The university is a complex system. The University of Texas at Austin. A red blood cell is a system within the circulatory system, within the human body as a larger system.
No further.
No, I'm just wondering. Okay, something. Okay.
There's a system. Yeah.
Okay. Whoa. A Sangha is a system. Systems are networks of relations. By now, many people are familiar with the concept of systems thinking. This is not the place for an academic discussion, but we do need to understand some key factors in the complex systems view that provide important insights into Sanghas and their development. What is a system? Donella Meadows, in her book Thinking in Systems, defines a system as an interconnected set of elements that is coherently organized in a way that achieves something. A system must consist of three kinds of things: elements, interconnections, and a function or purpose. I want to say that again. A system must consist of three kinds of things: elements, interconnections, and a function or purpose. A football team is a system with elements such as players, coach, field, and ball. Its interconnections are the rules of the game, the coach's strategy, the player's communications, and the laws of physics that govern the motions of ball and players. The purpose of the team is to win games, or have fun, or get exercise, or make millions of dollars, or all of these. A school is a system. So is a city and a factory and a corporation and a national economy. An animal is a system. A tree is a system, and a forest is a larger system that encompasses subsystems of trees and animals. Appamada is a system with elements such as participants, teachers, the zendo, the computers and monitors, the altar, and so on. The interconnections are the forms, the ceremonies, the practice of meditation, the Dharma talks, inquiry, classes, councils, the board, potlucks, programs, and so on.
It's always interesting what you could, like in art, what you could reduce. You know, in art, and still have the art? Or what you know, like, do you need a place? Do you need color? Do you need line? Do you need, is silence enough? You know, any of it.
Which is why the panel to the right seems quite appropriate. We
I know.
can't, yeah, we can't control systems or figure them out, but we can dance with them.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's spot on.
She wrote this book because she was a systems scientist, complex systems scientist, and none of her colleagues understood what systems were. And so she wrote this book for them so that they would get an insight into how systems function.
Hmm.
Appamada is a system with elements such as participants.
Yeah, we already read that paragraph. It's the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. The purpose, did we read this one too? The purpose of
No,
Appamada is to support people in waking up and growing. No, we didn't read that.
no.
And growing up together to convey the Buddha's Dharma for the benefit of all beings and to foster wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct and care in the world. Systems adapt to changes in their environments through dense networks of relationships that help the system maintain coherent and serve functions such as transmitting resources, information, and energy.
Complex versus simple systems. A complex system, like a human body, a stock market, or a sangha, is fundamentally different from a system that is just complicated, such as a watch or a refrigerator, which are simple systems. A simple system has predictable parts and outcomes. Its functions are clear and unchanging. In contrast, complex systems respond to changes in their environment unpredictably, balance chaos and order to maintain life and coherence, are both composed of independent systems and nested with larger systems. Let me try that one again. Are both composed of interdependent subsystems and nested within larger systems.
Okay. For example, our Sangha subsystems include councils, technologies, and gardens, all composed of individuals, each complex systems in themselves. Simultaneously, the Sangha exists within larger systems such as Zen traditions, local communities, and global ecosystems. Furthermore, like all living systems, a Sangha is a complex adaptive system. It can respond to changes in its environment or in its internal dynamics. In your own life, you can observe many complex systems around you and within you, from a leaf to a city or a town. Notice the relationships and processes that form them. Pay attention to their functioning and activities. Notice what flows freely and where these flows may be stuck or harming the system as a whole. If you only pay attention to the individuals in a situation, you miss the larger picture of the system's wholeness and well-being. So let's read the facing page.
Language can serve as a medium through which we create new understandings and new realities as we begin to talk about them. In fact, we don't talk about what we see, we only see what we can talk about. Our perspectives on the world depend on the interaction of our nervous system and our language. Both act as filters through which we perceive our world. The language and information systems of an organization are not only objective means of describing an outside reality, they fundamentally structure the perceptions and actions of its members. to reshape the measurement and communication systems of a society is to reshape all potential interactions at the most fundamental level. Language, as an articulation of reality, is more primordial than strategy, structure, or culture. Fred Kaufman and Donella Meadows, Thinking in Systems.
In your own life, you can observe.
Applications of systems thinking.
Oops. Okay. Applications of systems thinking. Understanding Appamada's unique organization requires a shift from focusing on individuals to thinking in terms of systems, evolution, and architecture. This shift is not about being rebellious, iconoclastic, or in opposition to the traditional model of Zen, but rather it is an adaptive response to new conditions where the Dharma must find ways to thrive. Like an ecosystem, the Sangha operates through relationships and flows of energy, information, resources, and attention. In administering large academic departments, I applied this system's view to small writing groups, classrooms, and even entire universities. I studied topics like collaborative writing to understand how relationships affect how students think and write, right use of power to understand the dynamics of authority, responsibility, and care, spiral dynamics to explore how values shape relationships. Through these lenses, I began to see that the relationships within the Sangha, both internal and external, are essential to its health and sustainability.
Characteristics of a healthy Sangha system. To strive, a Sangha must maintain a dynamic balance between order and chaos.
To thrive.
I'm sorry, what?
To thrive. You said
Must maintain a dynamic balance between order and, to thrive. What did I say?
thrive.
Oh. Too much emphasis on order drains the heart from the community, making it rigid and lifeless. Conversely, too much innovation risks losing the grounding of the Dharma. Boundaries must be flexible yet supportive, allowing flows of energy and information without becoming impermeable barriers in the system. A Sangha also needs resilience. Disruptions to systems have unpredictable impacts. For example, a teacher moving to another state might have less impact than we would predict. A small virus, like the one responsible for the global pandemic, can profoundly disrupt not only a Sangha, but entire human systems. These examples underscore the unpredictable consequences of impacts and disruptions for complex systems. But what I'm, order and chaos are so important in art. If you have only order, you get bored, and then you get only chaos. But why is chaos important in a Sangha?
I didn't say chaos was important.
Well, it's as a balance between,
or
is it just naturally occurring and you can have too much of it? Is that what
Yes, it's naturally occurring, and you can have too much of it, and you can also have chaos agents. That is, people whose
yes,
tendency is to create chaos where they are. So that can be very disruptive to the whole system, right? Okay.
should we do this?
Key take.
Should we do the polo?
Yeah.
Sure.
The polo team, and then we can go on.
How exciting! Always up for horses. A polo team is an example of a complex adaptive system, constantly changing according to the circumstances. Horses, riders, polo mallets, balls, goals, and the rules of the game.
You can go ahead. Key takeaways.
Okay. Key takeaways for systems thinking. In our Sangha, systems thinking fosters awareness that 1. Relationships and flows of energy, resources, and attention are central to the system. The Sangha as a whole, is more than the sum of its individual members. The system responds unpredictably to disturbances, sometimes strongly to minor events or modestly to major ones. Every system is interdependent with its subsystems and the larger systems it inhabits. Sorry, we're babysitting for my grandpup.
That's fine. From a systems perspective, our role is not to control or predict, but to design favorable conditions for the Sangha's well-being and development. As Danella Meadows writes, the future can't be predicted, but it can be envisioned and brought lovingly into being. Systems can't be controlled, but they can be designed and redesigned. We can't impose our will on a system. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever be produced by our will alone. We can't control systems or figure them out, but we can dance with them.
This is why, in our Sangha, we prioritize fostering relationships and designing structures that support collective liberation and resilience. It is not a center for pursuing individual enlightenment experiences or heightened states of individual consciousness. A healthy Sangha is not some idealized Japanese Zen center, but an adaptive relational system that evolves with changing conditions. It is bound by the Bodhisattva vow to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings.
So we can read the facing page, I think.
Okay, shall I start there? The practice is, therefore, to grow some roots. The Sangha is not a place to hide in, in order to avoid your responsibilities. The Sangha is a place to practice for the transformation and the healing of self and society. When you are strong, you can be there in order to help society. If your society is in trouble, if your family is in trouble, if your church is no longer capable of providing you with spiritual life, then you work to take refuge in the Sangha so that you can restore your strength, your understanding, your compassion, your confidence. And then, in turn, you can use that strength, understanding, and compassion to rebuild your family and society, to renew your church, to restore communication and harmony. This can only be done as a community, not as an individual, but as a Sangha. Thich Nhat Hanh, Friends on the Path.
Or in the Sangha, Kim.
There we go. In the Sangha, this perspective means to be aware of the whole system as a living organism together with its environment. This includes the physical space, built and natural, which both enables and constrains activity. The neighborhood noise level, parking, buildings, gardens, and walkways, interior rooms and decor, interior lighting and temperature control, cleanliness, and so on. These all shape the activities and the experience of participants. Is the space well maintained? Does it have adequate bathrooms? Is it accessible for those with physical limitations? Is it easy to get to or remote, like historical Zen monasteries in the mountains? Yes, I'm reading. But the complex system view is incomplete because living systems, humans, animals, trees, and even social groups like sanghas change over time as their conditions change.
When those changes are adaptive, better fit for their living conditions, and established permanently, we call it evolutionary. And so we expand our view of spiritual development for individuals and groups, such as sanghas, by adding the dimension of change over time, the evolutionary view.
I'm going to read this facing page. There's a picture of Robin and Leela and Jenny, Appamada workday. Complex systems require ongoing maintenance. In 1913, the Austrian economist, sociologist, and philosopher Otto Neurath proposed a parallel idea known as Neurath's boat. We are like sailors who on the open sea must reconstruct their ship, but are never able to start afresh from the bottom, he wrote. The ship needs to be repaired, adjusted, and remade, but this must be done while it sails. This means that the work of altering the ship has a certain character. Where a beam is taken away, a new one must at once be put there. And for the rest of the ship, the rest of the ship is used as support. Systems famously are resistant to change. If you mess with one part, you risk messing up the others. And this interdependence amounts to a pressure to keep things as they are. When we say that a system is broken, we sometimes mean that it's imperfect and seems hopelessly difficult to modify. But another way of looking at this is that we're on one of Neurath's boats. The boat is hard to alter precisely because it's sailing. The system is hard to change because it works. This doesn't mean that we don't want to change the system, but it does mean that we should interpret its resistance differently, not as a sign of failure, but as an indication of usefulness. Repairs are harder mid-voyage. That shouldn't make you want to burn your boat. Joshua Rothman, how do you know when a system has failed? This shouldn't make you want to burn your boat.
Like it.
Always an option.
Right.
The evolutionary view. Evolution is the story of dynamic relating over time. It is a force, a creative energy exclusive to living systems that responds to changes in the internal and/or external conditions of the system. Evolutionary change seeks to adapt the system to its changing conditions so that it can survive and thrive. Evolution is not a linear path. There are many branching possibilities. Each branch represents an evolutionary experiment, whether at large scale or even microscopic, that may end badly or in success.
Edward Kantz, is that how he pronounces his name?
Kanzi.
Kanzi, okay. Edward Kanzi wrote, throughout its history, Buddhism has the unity of an organism, in that each new development takes place in continuity from the previous one. Nothing could look more different from a tadpole than a frog, and yet they are stages of the same animal and evolve continuously from each other. The Buddhist capacity for metamorphosis must astound those who only see the end products separated by long intervals of time, as different as chrysalis and butterfly. In fact, they are connected by many gradations, which lead from one to the other and which only close study can detect. There is in Buddhism really no innovation, but what seems so is in fact a subtle adaptation of pre-existing ideas. Great attention has always been paid to continuous doctrinal development and to the proper transmission of the teaching. These were not the anarchic talking stuff, philosophizing of individualists who strive for originality at all cost. Quoted in Trust in Mind by Mu Soeng.
This is why, although our model of Sangha is so very different from the traditional models of Chinese Chan or Japanese Zen, I call it evolutionary rather than revolutionary. My high school biology teacher taught us that when faced with inhospitable conditions, living organisms have three choices: move, adapt, or die. It's hard to move a Sangha, although it can be done, and during a global pandemic, where would you go? And we do not, of course, want it to die.
So, adaptations to respond to changing conditions may be temporary, provisional, or enduring and transformational for the system. When they become permanent, they are evolutionary rather than makeshift measures. We tend to think about those adaptations that have proven to be better fit an organism to its environment while preserving its structural integrity and functioning as evolutionary. A lot depends on whether we consider the conditions as temporary and rare, such as a big storm, or an enduring and commonly occurring, such as a massive climate change that makes big storms more common and more severe. In the first case, you might just tape cardboard over the windows. In the second case, you might start building houses, highway systems for evacuation, storm drains, and rescue plans differently. So it is with Buddhism.
The facing page. Living successfully in a world of complex systems means expanding not only time horizons and thought horizons. Above all, it means expanding the horizons of caring. There are moral reasons for doing that, of course. If moral arguments are not sufficient, then systems thinking provides the practical reasons to back up the moral ones. The real system is interconnected. No part of the human race is separate either from other human beings or from the global ecosystem. It will not be possible in this integrated world for your heart to succeed if your lungs fail, or for your company to succeed if your works fail, for the rich in Los Angeles to succeed if the poor fail, or for Europe to succeed if Africa falls, or for the global economy to succeed if the global environment fails. As with everything else about systems, most people already know about the interconnections that make moral and practical rules turn out to be the same rules. They just have to bring themselves to believe that which they know. Thinking in systems.
In your own life, you've grown and developed over time, physically, psychologically, and socially, and the world around you has changed as well. Some of these changes have been welcome, and some have been unwanted. You've acquired your own methods and strategies for coping with these changes. Some of these work so well that they become part of our identity. Some don't work at all, and they are abandoned in our mental warehouse. But some work some of the time and fail at other times. If we're honest, most of our methods and strategies are like this: partially successful some of the time. This is also true for groups, like sanghas, on an evolutionary path together.
For millennia, Buddhism has adopted, reshaped itself.
It's,
It's Ed, right?
Yes,
yeah.
The other bald-headed guy out here. For millennia, Buddhism has adapted, reshaped itself around its core teachings from the Buddha and Buddha ancestors, evolved, spread, and thrived in monasteries, hermitages, temples, universities, books, and even private homes. In each place, the physical and social architecture have fundamentally shaped the patterns of activity occurring there. And still, the Dharma has survived through war, through cultural upheavals, through famine and epidemics, through the rise and fall of whole civilizations, and through times of poverty and prosperity. It's managed to speak to people through different languages, on different continents, in vastly different historical eras. It is the same for Sanghas. When conditions change, as they always do, we need to take a right-sized response. We can't make major changes on the whims of one person or even a large number of members. The structure and the function of our Sangha are the product of core principles, experience, and understanding exercised with great care.
We must be keenly observant of internal and external conditions before making decisions or changes. There are processes in place for this. It doesn't need to take a long time. For example, we made a rapid response to the COVID shutdown on March 12, 2020, shifting all of Appamada's programs online immediately.
Surviving the pandemic. How were we able to instantly put all Appamada programming online when the pandemic struck? We were not starting from zero. We had already been using Zoom for meetings of depth and practice, our reading group, and we had resources, especially myself, experience with technology from directing the computer writing and research lab, and Kim, experienced in almost everything. Kim trained online participants as AV monitors and tech troubleshooters. He set up and managed microphones, monitors, camera angles, laptops, cables, lighting, and all around troubleshooting. In this way, we were able to enter a new era, a bionic Sangha on an online, on-site hybrid Zen movement.
That's a funny word there, bionic.
Bionic, yeah, I like that.
Bionic Sangha. Yeah.
I thought I was mishearing it.
This shift involved an epic amount of work, technical skill, willingness, and generosity of spirit. Not everyone was comfortable in this new environment. It was a big adjustment. We did not have professional studios or video production staff, but we had the long siege of the pandemic when only the doshi, practice leader, could be in the zendo to adjust to the new online-only reality. When, after such a long absence, people were finally able to come together in person, we could not imagine returning to on-site only offerings. We could not exclude our new online Sangha. We were committed to them and care for them. We are so glad for their presence on the large screen in Zendo. This emergency adaptation represented an evolutionary change, a new reality. Maybe we want to get Charles Vogel's little quote here. There's a photo of our online folks.
August 28th, 2022 Dharma Talk, Online Sangha. I define a community as a group of individuals who share a mutual concern for one another's welfare. It's distinct from a group whose members may share ideas, interests, proximity, are any number of things, but lack concern for one another. Charles Vogel, Art of Community.
Let's see, where are we at now?
Now we're at, although the immediate
pandemic emergency has passed and we are once again able to meet in person, we've continued to offer our programs online as well, a hybrid format that offers the Dharma for people scattered all over the globe.
Isn't this Ed?
should be Ed.
Oh, okay.
No, wait. Did you read Anne?
Yeah, I read what Charles Vogel said.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, so it should be Ed.
Okay. I'm just practicing sharing. Although the immediate pandemic emergency has passed and we are once again able to meet in person, we've continued to offer our programs online as well, a hybrid format that offers the Dharma for people scattered all over the globe. Some forms were changed and some stayed the same. Some people loved the changes and some people disliked them, but the Sangha was transformed forever. At the personal level, during the pandemic, I was spending 7 to 8 hours a day on camera, leading Zazen, giving Dharma talks, engaging in practice discussions with Sangha members, meeting with councils, and attending board meetings. The house that had been filled with people, activities, and spiritual community was suddenly painfully empty. As weeks dragged into months and the isolation and mismanagement of the pandemic became the new normal, my sister began urging me to return to the Midwest, to family. My baby granddaughter was growing fast, but my interactions with her were also frustratingly on screens. Completely exhausted and depleted, I finally agreed to move in December 2020.
Maybe we should read this spacing page.
My first encounter with Appamada was during the pandemic on Zoom. Peg was running things on her own in the Zendo at the time because of the lockdown. I remember thinking the Zendo had a nice vibe and was impressed by how shiny the floor was. And the large singing bowl. I had been pointed in the direction of Appamada by a good friend of mine who I've known since childhood. All the participants were on Zoom, and at the end of the meditation, we had a chat, and I enjoyed talking to you all. You were very kind and reassured me that my presence was welcome. I hadn't been meditating all that long and had practiced solo previously and learned how to meditate from a book. It was the first time I had ever sat and meditated with others socially, and it helped ease the loneliness of the lockdown. And I've developed some great friendships via Appamada since. I wasn't too sure about the chanting and bowing at first, but that was because I hadn't encountered anything like that before. To be honest, I'm still not all that into the chanting, but the bowing I like now.
A generous Sangha member, Nelda, bought the house, preserving it for the Sangha. Heartbroken and alone, I packed up 25 years of my life and moved to Illinois, back to family and my Midwestern home. I was 72 years old. That long drive with a tiny puppy in the back of the car and followed by Glenn, one of our kind-hearted Sangha members, in the midst of a terrifying pandemic, could be its own book. Even upon arrival, I was in quarantine for 2 weeks before I could finally be together with my sister, hug my son, and hold my granddaughter close. Again, I felt completely devastated, a crushing failure, but I was finally with humans again, humans I cherish and belong to.
I had to accept a new role with the Sangha, a role from afar. But first, I had to rest and heal. And the Sangha had to struggle through these changes to regain its footing under the guidance of our newly entrusted Dharma teachers. Thanks for reading, everybody. So helpful.
Very good chapter again.
Well, I wonder about this. I really wondered about this chapter because it's really important. I think it's really important, but at the same time, it's so different from the other chapters, right? Kind of a thing. But it represents something, at least in my experience, is a way that people don't often think about what we're doing.
And the research person in me, the nerd, would even take more time, I think, reading this on my own to sit with various aspects of that because it is different. And it gives something that's, I think, incredible, relatable about the Sangha and about it in practical terms. And not only a metaphor for what you're living with your life, but with tangible examples. Like where you were saying, like the Sangha's like a living organism, as we are. And, we can be like the red corpuscles and the white blood cells that permeate through the Sangha, the body of the Sangha. And what I always find quite interesting and comforting from different angles is that no matter where you are or who you are in the Sangha, whether you happen to be somebody miraculously named Pegged, who was a co-founder, or if you happen to be somebody sitting in Hawaii, miraculously named Ed, we all still exhibit human behavior in there. It's not like somebody's become enlightened and they don't maybe make a mistake or have a different point of view or have to deal with things wanting to go one way or another. So I found that really quite refreshing. And even if it's not always understood, it gives a context, because sometimes we see people in the Sangha stepping away for a bit or coming back in and, having issues with sitting or saying, I sit for an hour and a half and life is sweet. So, and it shows the vitality, I think, of the Sangha, of the people that make up the Sangha as their healthy blood cells. And for me, it's like I can see the Sangha as me as an individual, but seeing me as an individual as the Sangha, it makes it easier to see the whole.
Yeah. I hope people will see that it's not just that you're in the Sangha, it's that the Sangha is in you. That's what it's serving. It doesn't have an independent existence off somewhere, that you go to or don't go to or what, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's really that kind of elasticity of the connections.
I like the systems discussion.
You did?
Yeah, I've always been kind of interested in that kind of system. I think a long time ago, when Galaxy Far, Far Away, read about different kinds of systems like you're bringing up, and my kids used to go crazy because when I would organize them to do something, or that was going to be long to, we would have a system for it, and they used to go. I heard them one time. I went back and they were going, well, how do you think we should do this? Well, I'm not really sure. Well, maybe we should go ask mommy. No. Do you want another system? No. We can figure it out. So anyway, but I really like, because that explained to me a lot more about how the Sangha functions and why it's not like other things. Not like why it's not like a church or not like a school or whatever, because it's working on a system.
Yeah, I hope that's what's coming through. That's really important to me, that people recognize this is distinct from other kinds of things you might know or might map onto it. It's not it's not school, it's not, a corporation, it's not, all of these things that we tend to like take something new and map it onto something we already know. So maybe it opens things up a little bit. Yeah. I had a lot of questions about this chapter because it's got theoretical material in it. But it was in my dissertation defense that I recognized what we're talking about is not a theory, it's not a model, it's not a hypothesis, it's a perspective, it's a way of seeing. So these ways of seeing change how we view what we're looking at, right? So that seemed important to me.
Well, and I think that was there. And one of the things, again, way back, as Melissa said, in a galaxy far, far away, when all of this was black hair, um, I worked with computers, before there were laptops and all that nonsense. And we did systems design. So we had to talk to users and find out what was going on there and then start to design things. And all of that system thinking and the logical if then else types of things. There is some of that connected with systems, but what's really good here is it has some of those things as foundations, but it layers on the fact that it is more than that because it's got the variable human characteristics with it. And it's not just a philosophy, it's not a set of rules. It is something that's lived. So it's beyond like a doctrinal which says if you're a Methodist, this is the doctrine you have to follow. It brings in that human element and it keeps it viable for dynamics, for change, for growth, and just having all of that stuff with the human aspect melded into it in a very livable way makes a lot of sense. That's why I say this was a very good chapter.
Oh, thank you. Because this was a big worry of mine. Is this even necessary? Do people even need this chapter? Are they just is this going to be tedious and boring for them? For you, Anne and Kim, I wonder if it's accurate to what your understanding is of, when you look at the Sangha, am I misrepresenting anything in this chapter? Is there anything that I'm misstating or it doesn't work like that?
I don't think so at all. And I really like what Ed's saying. And in this world where I've been kind of drowning a little in AI, the human element is just so important as a reminder that there are people in relationships. And so I'd like to read what I wrote. I've been reading this afternoon a manual for priests and was ready to throw in the towel, as the saying go. So it was a great relief to read this chapter, which was such a humanistic view of Buddhism, and to see how we are a mixture of systems. What distressed me was that the goal in the priest manual was to become enlightened through some methodology and then to transmit using that methodology of enlightenment to others. Even Buddha would not have been able to pass mustard because he didn't become enlightened from a teacher. Collective liberation was not mentioned. This thing we are doing is revolutionary, is revolutionary and so needed today in a world that is separating people more than bringing them together.
So that's so good to hear. Of course, my hope for the chapter, but I never know whether the writing is going to actually affect that, have that.
Well, I can imagine a lot of people's first reaction will be, well, no, this isn't right. This isn't, but I don't know what you can do.
I don't know what I can do about that. Yeah.
I was particularly struck by the quote. I can't remember who it was. There were two quotes that were in the right hand, the sidebar. And one was about perspective and language.
Rothman.
Yeah. That changing the language is a bedrock change, which seemed really interesting to me. And the one about the two kinds of communities that was from the Buddha, I didn't like that. I had a hard time with that.
Wait, you didn't like that, did you say?
No, because I think that there's got to be room for questioning and dissent and different opinions and different ideas and
would argue against that. I think we would, if it falls into dispute and people are attacking each other.
well, attacking. Yes, I'll go with attacking.
Well, that's what he's talking about, that when they start quarreling and arguing and fall into disputes, stabbing each other with piercing words, that, that's what he's
And that's much of our world now.
Yeah. Yeah. But to dwell in concord doesn't mean that everybody has the same view. It means, we viewing each other with eyes of affection, you respect each other. And you have a certain willingness, right, to engage and to listen to each other.
Yeah.
I think that's more what he's talking about, not some kind of I think sometimes people believe that when we talk about something as harmonious, that means everything is the same. That is not correct. We know harmony in music is, many sounds coming together in a way that's pleasing, right?
Mm.
So it's not that, it's not that every instrument in the orchestra sounds the same.
Right.
I've been seeing the five skandhas as kind of an invitation of that, in the way that it demonstrates that what all we're having is experiences, and then so someone else is having an experience, and it seems like a way we can be more together with someone else, realizing, oh, they're having an experience, I'm having an experience, rather than truth.
Well, the little interpersonal exercises in mindfulness that we do are precisely for that reason. So you see, not only your partner has a completely different perspective on what just happened than you do, even though you were sitting together in the same place, but then in the larger group, you hear all these different perspectives that are quite different, right? But none of them are wrong. None of them are bad. It's just, and all of a sudden you're building this capacity to respect and to notice that another person has a completely different experience than you do, which is a difficult thing for us to grasp, right?
Yeah, and I was talking about the exercise we did where we drew ourselves in the center and our world around us, and I was sitting exactly in that seat when I drew the picture
Uh-huh.
in the intensive, and then I saw the person's drawing next to mine, and they were wrong because I wasn't in their center. So it was really neat to be in that same Zabaton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in those little ways, because the stakes are so non-existent in those exercises. Nobody's going to be ashamed. Nobody's going to be criticized. Nobody's going to lose points. Nobody's going to gain points. It makes it a lot more easier to be receptive to another person's perspective, which is entirely different from your own. So I love that about that, and that's part of how it's programmatically built into what we do.
And that's
I
part of
really
where
like.
language. I'm sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, it's okay. I really liked the section you had on what happened when the pandemic came. The pivoting, to me, that was amazing. I mean, I think it's because of the core of what the Sangha is. It wasn't an, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, we're just going to have to leave these people. We're not just not going to be able to function. The immediate response was, how do we all come together?
Yeah.
How do we make it so people can come together? I thought that really touched me a lot. I'm sorry, Ed.
Yeah, that was our most important thought. How are we going to keep people together through this? Yeah.
But also supporting them individually.
Yeah, well, that was what I saw too. That was important. That both is important.
But they were supported individually by having people in the same boat.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah, it's just this, it's funny because I have so little capacity to see these chapters from the outside, you know. That's why your perspective is so helpful. Um, I don't know what people are going to find interesting or what they're going to see as meaningful for them. So I have to just keep going. Now I have much of chapter 13. Chapter 13 is pretty much drafted, but it needs pruning now. So I, and it doesn't have any of the elements of images or anything with it, right-hand page elements. I'm working away on it. Yeah. And then chapter 14 will be about the programs, and chapter 15 will be about those. It'll be just a little overview of all those influences that have served us, like Homey and internal family systems. In the conclusion, and I did, maybe I can share something with you, which is what I wrote when I was thinking about this. When this goes to print, maybe it should be in 2 volumes. And this is based on what folks said last time, where they, hold on again, here's, not you, not you, you.
Peg, Edward Weston had 2 volumes of his day books, and the first was titled How Young I Was, and the second was The Strongest Way of Singing.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun, you know, him looking back and seeing that he was so young, that this was the experience that led up to who he was.
What I said was, introduction to the first volume would include something that says, not to the Appamada story is in 2 volumes, but it is not 2 books. Volume 1 focuses on the background and training of the founding Dharma teachers for Appamada, Peg Syverson and Flint Sparks, and profiles their primary teachers, Joko Beck and Zenke Blanche Hartman. Volume 2 focuses on the origins, evolution, and principles of Appamada, a contemporary Zen Sangha in Austin, Texas. Describes a dynamic, fresh, and creative expression of Zen for contemporary lives and community. Although they can be read independently, these 2 volumes are truly not 2. They complete each other. Readers will notice a change in tone from the deeply personal in Volume 1 to the practical and descriptive in Volume 2. The first volume will appeal to those more drawn to biography and autobiography. The second volume will serve those seeking to understand how to develop and support a spiritual community, or in short, what makes Appamada so special. So I thought that'd be a way to introduce that. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I like that. That's very good.
You don't have to have one before the other. They don't have to be done sequentially, I would imagine.
Right.
No, I mean, I think I want, when I show this to anybody, an editor or anything like that, I'd like it to be one whole thing so that they get a sense of the wholeness of it. But then they can see, okay, we're going to have this in 2 volumes, and they have a different focus. Now
Very good. Ed, you were going to say something, and I kind of interrupted you. Did you want to?
You forget. I have no idea what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I
trying
have
to
that
live
too.
yeah, I'm practicing
Live in the
what we
present.
talk about. I'm living in the now. I forget. Sorry.
It's okay.
You know, Peg,
If
when
it's
you
important, it'll come back.
when you were talking about the 2 different sections, it made me think about, it reminded me of something in the earlier reading about the seeds and the soil. And the first part would be the seeds, you and Flint. And the second part would be the soil, what was created.
Oh,
I like that.
that's really true.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. How these seeds got planted.
Yeah, how the soil developed.
And the other thing I think is, for me, this captures what I think of as what makes Appamada special. But anyone else looking at it, I don't know that they would see this, like, I don't know that this would be something others would notice. there's a part of me that says, I want the Zen world to understand this as an authentic and valuable approach to Zen.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, we'll see. We'll see. I know that the more traditional, what I think of as the fundamentalist Zen people, they will not think of it as very well. That's why it's got as much weight as it has, partly, like it's got as much weight as it has because I want those people to have to pay attention.
Those
Mm.
people that what? I've missed a word.
I want those people to pay attention. But really, I want them to respect our students. That's my primary, the people that we authorize as teachers and our students, I want them to be respectful.
And didn't the fundamentalists have to come to their current state by some changes in permutations over time as well? So
They would not agree to that. That is what's happened to them, but it is true, However, aspirationally, they're still aspiring to be a
right.
Japanese Zen temple, right? They're still aspiring to that. They may realize that they fall far short of it, and as far as the Japanese are concerned, never going to be enough. I once said that to Chosen. Don't you understand? You could never be Japanese enough because the Japanese
Japanese.
never recognize that as anything other than some weird American aberration,
Right.
and it's just that's the way it is. But yeah, so partly, I mean, I had my abbot in the monastery is very much a fundamentalist. She's very much old school. They've just driven that monastery further and further towards the Japanese ideal, and more power to her. To me, it's kind of like a theme park, let's say.
Mm.
Yeah.
Really, someplace you go for a vacation to immerse yourself in another reality.
Yes, with characters and costumes and unusual foods and of course weird rides. So yeah.
Odd hours.
Anyway, we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for bearing with me through this long process. It is so incredibly helpful. I can't even tell you how much it means to me because now I'm writing, I can hear your voices, I can hear you reading it, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, now Ed would be reading this part.
I came for the rides and I stayed for the food. How's that?
But I so appreciate it and taking time out of your Monday night to do this. It means a lot and it's so incredibly helpful to the project. So, and of course, I'm hoping that we get all of your voices in it. So, be thinking what kinds of reflections you might want to submit.
Mm.
250 to 350 words. Any of these topics. Yeah, especially this coming chapter is about the councils, the board, the generosity initiative, and the succession model for success. Yeah. That's what the four main topics of the next chapter are. Those are the places where we made real innovations in the structure itself. And then there's what we did with programming will be in chapter. Yeah. So the structural things, that's what's in chapter 13. So yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Anyway, thank you. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
St. Patrick's Day. I'm
Thank you.
I'm the only one with green on.
I know. I never went back and finished changing back into the green. I apologize. I'm green in spirit. I'm carrying Kermit the Frog on my shoulder.
I'm pretty sure the Chicago River is green. That is something.
It's all the beer.
I'm from the French Irish. I wore red.
Touche. Y'all have a good evening.
Good night.
Bye.